prize which is given every 4 years in Switzerland. That's the reason why I give the title to the lecture, Concrete Concept. The title expresses the importance of the material concrete in our work. For our practice that started back in 1997, in almost every of the around 40 built projects, the material plays a major role. But it's not only the immanent presence of the material, it is rather the range of options and opportunities that concrete opens. This wide range affects our thinking. Every architectural vision that finally results in a built form knows its abstract starting point. It seems that concrete is the base material, the basic material that enables us to start to think about architecture, no matter from what direction this thinking is led. In this lecture, I would like to reflect on these thoughts by introducing 6 different themes and, of course, a series of projects. Function and program. We love concrete because concrete appears as a neutral material, neutral in a cultural sense. Infrastructure buildings are made of concrete, bridges, roads, bunkers, warehouses, streets, the backbone of our society's playground. Therefore, its value is not totally defined, it's neutral. It enables us to fill it with any content we like, to give it any meaning we want, any program. For us, the program is the initial source of a project. For any architectural task, the function or program evokes the strongest and most direct imagery. Everybody reacts immediately if you hear the word church or bunker. We get in direct contact with our own experience, and a personal imagery is occurring. The function and program gives the soul to every building. The source, which is very much connected to the development of a society and culture. Programs are invented by ordinary life, often before architects bring them into a controlled form. Just think of a spaceship or a sheep shed. We believe in the high potential the definition and invention of a program can have on architecture. I've chosen this image from early work of Sophie Calle, French artist, kind of interpreted the way she let friends sleep in her private bed. I think even around 40 people slept in her bed. And what is interesting for us is that the bed actually becomes another place, a public place, in a certain way. On this theme, I introduce one of our first projects, the Loft House building, which we see as a programmatical invention, an urban shelf to live on, open platforms spanned into a gap of a 19th century block. The house appears as a shelf, as an open shelf, and kind of opens up a dialogue between the street and the courtyard. It's located in the outskirts of Basel. You can see it here on the Google image. The courtyards are very, very narrow, almost equal in size, in width as the streets and the courtyards. We started by thinking, reflecting, and found the references in artists, Atelier, Donald Judd, for instance, John Pawson. We were interested in the way he was treating simple materials to kind of enrich their appearance. And of course, we were thinking about flexibility of space, of living space. So the shelf is existing of just one open space, each floor, a size of about 130 square meters. And it's kept by the existing walls side by side and completely open to the street and to the courtyard. The typology is very simple. There are 2 core elements which are almost set in the middle. One core is for the elevator shaft, for staircase and bathroom, and the other one is a shaft for the kitchen. You see the columns set in a clear position, and then the form of the facade, which also changes on each floor. Kind of try to create a more sculptural expression in the facade. And of course to give every apartment its individual look. The shelf is a stapled building, stapled with very, very, let's say, very narrow. It's just about 10 meters in depth. And in that sense, when you're in the middle of the apartment, you're exposed to the street and exposed to the garden and to the neighbors. The two images show the appearance of the facade under the light. On the left-hand side, you see a situation with clouded sky, and of course, the sun sharpens the contour of the glass and makes it kind of solid. The contour of each platform is followed with the balustrade of green glass. Otherwise, the windows appear as dark slices. The frames have been colored black, therefore. The courtyard is very similar. There's just one cantilever, one element that sticks out of the very unique form, and that enables a view into the longitudinal view into the courtyard. This is what I mentioned. In the middle, you see both the city space and the garden space. The positioning of the block in the center enables to circulate around it, and therefore, according to the urban form of the street and the courtyard, we enlarge the perspective. The cantilever element on the street enables to see along the street, and very similar in the garden. By walking along the window, you have a very wide view into the length of the courtyard. The elements which we've used are kept raw. We have the structure made of concrete mainly. The core element also poured on-site concrete. We have kept the metal columns as they came on place, just painted them in a grayish color. The floor is anhydrite, a material that can be poured on in the full surface without subdividing it with joints. And of course, the color of the floor matches with the color of the ending of the neighboring wall. In this sense, a continuity from floor to wall and ceiling is being made. We've also used concrete to create furniture inside. For instance, the kitchen, which is a cantilever element. If you remember the image of the floor plan, the middle axis enables to have the kitchen cantilever to the courtyard or to the street. So people could decide during the process if they wanted to have the living room more towards the inner of the courtyard or towards the street side. In this sense, we've treated the inner space almost as a public space. So for us, concrete is used for furniture very often in the city, in urban places. Just a detail. And the second theme, space. We love concrete, the material that reminds us of an unsharp vision of the first spatial experience, the first spatial contact, concrete and clear or real and abstract at the same time, with a vague inner secret. Concrete enables us to create pure space, homogeneous, open, ever changing through the influence of the light. We think space and light are the unaffordable values of architecture because they are non-material, just defined by their limits. The theme which makes architecture unique. It's the inner secret architects want to achieve. Space relates to human scale, to our body, and the possibilities of our perception. We think spatial qualities must be thought of in every scale. The urban scale, the size of the city, the proportions of the city spaces, the public spaces, but also the architectural space, the buildings, the corpse of the buildings. But we also think of the space of a detail. How does the space of a detail influence the other themes, the bigger scales? We like to create spatial flow that links architecture with the environment. I introduce a series of private residences to reflect on these themes of space and light. This first project is a private house with an atrium. It's kind of an introverted construction due to the neighboring situation. The house is kind of situated in a neighborhood in the middle of a area with houses around. Very dense, and there is a particular story about the building plot. When the owner bought it, the previous owner started to dig a hole, and he wanted to create kind of a construction. And he wasn't able to build the house. He rather sold the property. And the new owner had to accept the hole that has been digged there before. So in that sense, the house is laying much lower in the ground, and we've decided not to open it, or just briefly open it to the surrounding. This is the backside corner that you see, and of course the sculptural quality that the house has from the outside. This is the opposite side from the entrance. There's a private street leading to the main entrance gate. And once you're in there, you are within this private cosm. The house is constructed of 2 floors, an arrival floor arriving with a car or by foot. You open the gate and you are in a kind of almost to all sides closed environment. There is a atrium, as I mentioned, that perforates the 2 floors. The entrance floor, which we see as the more public, more open area, and the garden floor that is covered by the wall at the very end. This is the ground floor plan with the private street, with the plaza and the functions around it, and above that, also with the option to circulate, you see the garden level. So you access the upper level through these very narrow stairs, and from here, from this position, the perspective is opened to the very end of the construction of the house, of the garden that is inserted in this concrete frame. It's possible to circulate around the inner court. The private rooms are positioned on the south side. On the south side, on the north side, the view opens to the garden. Show you a few images. This is the entrance with the court and the upper floor that is almost cantilever covering this area. The perforations of the atrium, a view to the other side, detail of the window, for which we have used wood, and the the main space. That shows how open the structure, how open the space is, how much the different layers are connected together. The garden, this covered outside space, the main living area, the courtyard. So it's like layering from the garden to the open center. Also, in the inside we've used concrete as a material to create furniture, to create a kitchen, the chimney, and of course the wood as a second material adds with the previous, with the sculptural quality of the concrete. So it's like an inlay. The framing of the window continues into the furniture, for instance here of the library, the living area. Just a detail of the kitchen, a view through the courtyard to the other side with the working space. This is the view backwards. And one of the structural details, this column and the supporting beam, they create a kind of an open knot. So we have kind of changed the position of the column. In this sense, you kind of see how the force is being led from the roof into these beams, into the column. Another detail, the columns here, the beams are thickened at the very end to kind of create a gap between surrounding wall and the flying beam. So depending on the position where you are and where you stand, this gap opens or closes. A view from the garden, the same detail here as I mentioned, can be seen from this side, from this image. Meanwhile, the garden is grown and the house is kind of inserted in the green environment. The water flows to the outside of the property. I think one last image of the pool area in summertime. The second project has some similar themes, but still is very different due to the positioning in the landscape. The house is located near the lake of Lucerne, a very picturesque area, mountain scenery, lake, water, meadows, just fantastic, just actually like a postcard scenery Switzerland is well known for. Most of the houses that are constructed in this slopey area, they mainly focus to the fantastic view. For us it was clear that this cannot be the only thing to look at, not just looking outside and having the view as framed in a TV, like framed with like an image. For us this was just one way to look at the landscape. The other is the back side. So there's one beautiful view and the enclosure like a courtyard, more like an urban space. In this sense, there is similarity to the last project. And well, you can see this on the main entrance floor. There is the street access from north. You enter here from the backside, and again the house kind of closes completely to the street, with the exception of just one single window here at the very end. But from here you can kind of walk downwards into the courtyard, and from here you already have a view into the landscape. The entrance is exactly at the position where we created a gap. So the house is split into two sides, and from here the continuity of the vertical space is given. The other rooms are meant to be oriented horizontally. In the lower floor, this theme is continued. You end at the very, very end of the glass, of the surrounding glass, and you have the direct view into the landscape. This is a side view from the house, and the main view from the garden, or just from the meadow, I must say. Here you can see the theme of the horizontality of these platforms and the verticality that kind of is created from the backside across the roof to combine the two formal themes. This is the entrance side at the back with the courtyard, as I mentioned. This upper level is the access level, which we perforated to create areas with central light. When you enter, you just look outside again, and here you can kind of glimpse at the landscape. You have a first impression of the location where you are. The view through the corridor at the very back, and then at the end of the corridor, the main sleeping area opens to the landscape. This is the image of the lower living area. You come along this gap, as I mentioned, which is completely covered with plants. And you have the view into the landscape from the back. The structure of the house almost disappears, so we would expect to have like 2 columns maybe for this covered outside space, but we decided just to keep it asymmetric. The third house is also located at the hillside. It's very, in a way, similar how you approach the house from the back and how the house opens towards the landscape. The difference is the proportion of the house, and of course the way we've worked with the structure is much more a dense sculptural project rather than an open structure. This is the back side and the front side. This undercut is where the access to the upper level is positioned, a very long stair that enables to go to the upper floor. And the floor plan now shows the difference. The property was very dense, and we decided to kind of compress from the access and work out kind of layered wise the floor plan from the access to the ramp to the upper floor, and from here through this dense small space you enter into the main living room where you finally turn around and get the view into the garden and the landscape. The layout of the upper floor is rather simple, so the back of the house is also completely closed. There is just one zenithal light here at the spinning point of the ramp, and of course in the bathroom there is also rooftop openings to give light into the back of the house. We've also used concrete as the main material. This is a brass entrance which kind of can be folded, can be opened. The side view, where you can kind of also glimpse into the garden. And then a view from the inside, the two floors, or let's say the point where you access the house, you see into the two areas. The very long stair and the main floor with the living areas. So this is the view towards the landscape, towards west, where the courtier is finished, and you kind of the house is the last building of the neighborhood. A view from into the upper floor, so you can the space can be opened or subdivided with these sliding doors. The fourth house is built in Basel, in a neighborhood from the 1940s. It replaces a building from the 1970s. It's a private villa that is also kind of close towards the public space, towards the street, and opens to a private garden. What was astonishing for us is that the owner, the client, completely wanted intimacy and didn't want to open up the facade of the house, or didn't want any visual contact. Or it was very difficult to discuss this, to open up the house to the street. So in this sense, we kind of try to open up, to slice up the volume, and just to give a brief idea of what is happening behind. The main or the most important space to kind of bring the light from the west side into the house is this double height entrance hall, which receives light from the side. So at least when you're inside the house and you're staying during the day, you feel how the light modulates the main hall, the double height hall, and with the light and shadow, with the play of the light and shadow, you kind of feel connected with your environment. This is the layout from the main floor with the access from the street. This is the main hall in its size, with the staircase that twists around here, and again we can circulate into the main living space, the kitchen, and back to the entrance. The upper floor, the middle floor I must say, also circulates. It's possible to circulate around this center double height space. At the very end, there is a view given into the space. So this is the working area, and from here, the bureau is opened, the library is opened to the main hall. On the very top, the master bedroom is located and opens up to a terrace. We've used different surfaces, different castings to kind of create a more abstract expression of the wall. The house appears as layered or as stapled of different concrete blocks. This is the view from the side, from the street. Close up, and this double height entrance hall. This image is not too good. You can see how this is completely inserted into the house, and there's just a few viewpoints. This window to the working area, the side light from the very top, from the attic, and there's a direct view contact to the street. You turn around and look into the garden. There's two different sizes of windows, sliding doors, and a side window. Again, from the kitchen, you have a direct access to the garden. This image shows from the middle level or from the stairs a view into the double height space. From here you can, the space opens towards the rooftop. Side view from the garden and the view backwards to the house. Structure, type, and typology. We love concrete because the material represents the spectrum of building structures. From the archaic cave to the minimalistic shed, horizontality to verticality. Structure, the skeleton of every building, timeless fundament and roof of every idea. The structure relates to gravity and the way we are bound to the planet. It allows to grow above the surface, can extend the surface and reach the ability to fly. A building type is defined by its structural idea. The inner structure can be composed like an icon, which we recognize as typology. I introduce a project which is completely structural, a core building that stabilizes the remains of an old house, the ruins of an old house, which has been abandoned for more than 50 years. The house is located in a side valley in the south of Switzerland, Ticino, at Linescio, a village that is almost abandoned, that has less and less people living there, and people that come back are mostly staying there for just a period of time. This is also the story of this project, the summer house of Linescio. You can see the structure here, the existing or how it was reconstructed in a certain way. When we found the old ruin, the roof was completely demolished, and let's say all the soft parts, all the soft constructed parts, the wooden beams and floors, they were demolished or kind of fell into the cellar, into the lower parts of the house. The idea was to keep the construction very simple, and also in terms of not going to high tech, going into too many installations. The decision was made that the house should only be used during summer period. So there is no heating and also no real windows. There's just one actual window with a window pane. The other openings can be closed with shutters, with wooden shutters. You can see the already built situation. So this house, this is the main house, this is the annex. The main house originally had 3 floors. This lower floor was for keeping the sheep. Actually, the technical room with heating in a certain way. There was a main floor, and the sleeping area was above it. And you accessed it outside through a side door. You can see that later in the image. In the side part of the building, it was used to dry chestnut. The area is well known for, or is known for chestnut trees. And people lived actually from this plant or from these trees. So they dried chestnuts to have something to eat during winter period. So when we started to rebuild, we completely took away the roof because it wasn't of any use, and then we poured the concrete layer or layer by layer into the existing remains with the natural stone, the wall with the natural stone. So there's this kind of a surface or a surface that is touched with the natural surface of the stone, or that kind of links the existing with the new. So what you can see here is a concrete model that we recently made that shows the inner core that is not being seen, of course. It's completely hidden by the natural stone wall. There's just a few elements that show what has been happening. A chimney here on one side and one big opening to the garden, and the third element is this pond in the garden. So you approach from the side, find yourself in a very homogeneous concrete space. These shutters, or these shutters close the openings that are cut the whole height. Of course, we didn't replace the middle floor. We kept it just in one space. So during summer, you open up the house, and your view goes along the existing remains of the house. This opening links to the annex, which is being just stabilized by a few steel beams. And of course, we just poured a new level, a new floor that finally ends up in this water room with a bath and the water coming from the very high tube. This is the view towards the valley. Again, here you can see how the shadow is being created by the remains of the outer skin of the house. Here you understand how the programming functions. There is a chimney, an open chimney at the very end, and from here you can access the sleeping area above. So during colder days or nights, the concrete is like a container, a heat container that warms up the bed above it. Construction and material. We love concrete constructions because they are archaic and pure. The construction transports the idea into the surface that changes through time, changing through the influence of the environment. For us, this is the emotional aspect, because it reminds us of our own limitation. Construction is composition, if we consider the identity of each material. We like to play and reinterpret material. We like to enrich a material by the assemblage, even when it is considered as being poor. Its value can raise. The house I introduce was built in Basel 2 years ago and replaces an existing house, a row house from the 19th century, I must say. It's located in Klein Basel. Here you can see the Rhine. So this is also 19th century block structure with certain areas that have been replaced. This is a church area, St. Pauluskirche, and the plot was at the very end of a former row of houses, and you can already see by decreasing the density how the area, how the neighborhood and how the street has already changed through time. So the building code enabled since the 1970s to build houses of 5-6 floors, and these 3 houses remained until now, until the previous owner or until the owner asked us to replace the old house and position this almost tower-like construction, which goes up to the very top of the height of the code, of the zoning code. So what appears as an exception in the street here is actually the normality. So these 2 houses are the exception when you look at the road as a complete continuous space. What we did is we created 2 triplex apartments or buildings or houses, we could say. So each contains 3 floors. So this is one house with a direct access to the garden, and the second house has an access to the rooftop. There is a structural theme or a construction theme. On one side, the house is very slim. There's just one raising wall. And on the other side, this area differs from floor to floor. It contains staircase and infrastructure spaces. So for us, it was important to build this duality between the perforated or the space that sticks through the depth of the building and the rather dense cabin-like dense areas on the right-hand side. Both apartments are accessible individually. So this concrete model shows how you can get to the upper apartment by just going these staircases here to the point, and from there backwards, or from there one more back here to the very top floor. So it's like almost a Dutch typology where every apartment, or very often apartments, each apartment has a direct access from the street. So in the floor plan you see how this influences the space, the main space that is going through the depth of the building. The first floor is very simple kept, and on each floor there's different functions located here in the area of the staircase. So bathroom, for instance, cabinet and kitchenette. This is already the first floor of the upper triplex apartment. Once more, the cross-section shows how the staircase is formed. We kind of created two spatial conditions. On one side there is the very linear proportion of the stairs, and on the other side we decided to form a continuous line in the ceiling. So when you walk upwards, you kind of you're kept by this continuous space. The very top level is set back. This is according to the existing rule of the maximum profile. The image here is taken from the garden side. This window pane can be opened full size, so it's like a construction that can be twisted around a middle spine. And here you can see how the assemblage, how the two elements, the concrete and the wood, are combined, and how the function of the windows kind of creates the look of the building, the expression of the building. This rounded edge comes from the staircase that is turning around and goes into the other direction. Voila. So this is the position open. So both parts can be open. So you have almost a direct view from the garden to the street. This is the staircase, continuously going up 2 floors, from which point you turn around and continue to the very top floor. Finally arriving here, you have this homogeneous concrete space that allows, here this opening allows a view into the staircase. And this is a sleeping floor, the area for sleeping, where we have a full height, a full size window, and just one opener here that allows to have a contact with the air. The same space with furniture and the bathroom, which has been completely poured in concrete from the sink to the bathtub. So it's also, like, let's say, a continuous concrete form. On the upper living floor, the chimney is creating a certain dense area. The triangle is a form that kind of sticks out of the orthogonal principle of the typology. You can see this in another image. So it kind of closes the view or the exposed position to the street. This is the image backwards into the garden, and it's fantastic how this birch tree is kind of following the tower upwards to the very top, where you can still see here how the existing birch tree is following the contour of the house. Appearance, beauty, iconography. We love the appearance of concrete, the surface which always tells the story of its development process, which shows the traces of the handcrafted, which is the result of an imprinting process. Although this meaning is not being understood. In this sense, we transfer this interpretation to a general meaning of architecture and beauty. Of course, we like the classical themes of beauty: proportion, assemblage, repetition, tectonics, the composition and appearance of the material, and the appearance under the influence of light, the colors. But we also apply to a renewal beauty aspects which relate to the undefined, or an abstract idea, or a conceptual code, which are more the result of a process, which relate to the direct reflection of the present condition of culture and our society. The image of the self-bomber has been used because there is not a direct contact to the icon that we are known, to a flying object that is already kind of clear in our mind. So the stealth bomber has its form, the form is created through the idea of camouflage, and of course not being seen under the rays of the radar. In this sense, I introduce the project of the Swiss Pavilion, a project that is more or less the result of a long discussion and a process, and in which we have not thought much about proportion, beauty, or classical ideas of beauty and expression. The Swiss Pavilion was built just for half a year, in the year of 2010, for the Shanghai World Exposition, which took place in the south of the city, south of the old town. Let's say old town. In Shanghai terms, it's still the old town, although most of the buildings, or very many buildings, are being replaced constantly or continuously. And the south area, it's not just an area, a site for an exposition, it was also an idea to kind of change the appearance of the city, to change the condition of the city. It was a very political exposition in that sense, or a very political process, because the city government was able to kind of push out industries that have been here for decades, or let's say almost centuries, and that have polluted the heart of the city for a long time. So the idea was to have a very, let's say, a very political movement, and to enable a change in this area of the town. Of course, the expo was the ideal, which hasn't been kept in a certain way. Of course, the whole site is now being split up and sold to investors, and very many of the ideas of the theme of the expo, Better City, Better Life, could not be continued. When we started with the concept of the Swiss Pavilion, we looked at the two cities. Shanghai, a very fast-growing city, more than 1,000 high-rise buildings being under construction at that time. A city that is set up by several cities, so pluralistic in a certain way. And we combined this image with the image of central Switzerland, downtown Switzerland, it's also called. Zurich, this is the Zurich airport, and this is the lake, the old town of Zurich around here. And by thinking of the theme of Better City, Better Life, I mean, the Chinese were asking for solutions for the very fast-growing urban areas in their country. We just said we cannot handle with this, or we cannot compare this to our situation, to our condition we have in Switzerland. Because Switzerland kind of exists of a duality of two spatial conditions that appear at the same time due to the topography and let's say the height of the topography. There's always a direct link from the cities to nature. And of course, due to the density of the country and the very small size of the country, the direct link from urban areas to nature is possible at any time. So even from Zurich, Bankenplatz, you can reach the lakeside or the next forest within a few minutes. So for us, the idea of this immediate condition, nature and city, enabled to the idea of a complex building, a hybrid building that combines city and nature at the same time. For us, in the theme of the sustainability, the continuous change of energy was one of the major spatial ideas. We created a flow through the pavilion by thinking of double spirals, by thinking of continuity and changing of energy. So for us, the visitors of the pavilion should kind of generate the energy by just walking through and by building up contact among each other during the period that they walk through the pavilion and look at the building and look at the exposition areas. So you see the two symbols which are used in the Far East, the yin-yang on the left-hand side and the Kundalini spiral on the right-hand side. Kundalini spiral, which combines vertical upwards going energy with downwards going energy. This is the image of the competition project, where you can see a covered area here. We called it the urban plaza. Above this, a meadow that is kind of like could be cut out of our country, be replaced or positioned in China. Nature that covers the city, that protects the city, the space where humans gather and meet. The two conditions or the two spatial areas are combined or brought together with a chairlift that brings people from the urban plaza to the meadow above. So it's the element that links the two. The floor plan shown here shows the urban plaza, how the building more or less is just an open structure with a curtain following the outline, a curtain that is completely transparent, that stands for the symbol of openness. It could be pulled away at any time, and the roof is the load of the roof is brought to the ground through these round columns, along which we fold a ramp system, going up, going down at the same time. That means, show this in this image, we've used two directions, going into the exhibition area and coming out again, and again a double spiral for the circulation of the chairlift. So in this sense, people always have a direct view contact when they go upwards with those people coming downwards. This is the upper floor plan, just to show the size of the meadow. A few images. This is the upwards ramp with the view towards the French pavilion and the German pavilion, and this middle space, which kind of caused a lot of reactions in the press, and there was a debate about this, and some journalists wrote Switzerland is being represented by a parking lot. We felt offended, of course, at first, and then reflected about this and said, well, actually, this is probably exactly what it is. The space cannot really be defined. It could be anything. So in a sense, it's an archaic space. It can be filled with any connotation. It can be filled with any meaning. So in that sense, it could be a parking lot for this journalist. It reminded him of a parking lot. Actually, I've always seen a cathedral. There's a big variety of options, of course. So this ramp leads upwards, comes down from the other side. This is a view into that space. We have used a technique that is being used for constructions and tunnels. It's a sprayed on concrete. Underneath, we have constructed the pavilion of steel with steel columns. So in that sense, the surface that you see is only about 6 centimeters thick, but it appears as a continuous, homogeneous form. The open curtain, and finally you go up the second cylinder to have let's say a 10 minutes ride across the meadow. What was nice for us, the image is a little too green, I would say. What was nice for us is the continuity of the space, so there was just one park area beside the pavilion, and in that sense you were kind of flowing above the city, and the size of the pavilion was enlarged by the park being built next to it. A compressed image, of course, with a tele-objective, you always compress the perspective, and so these high-rise buildings are on the other side of the city. We said the open plaza, it stands for a non-hierarchic space. So the pavilion is cannot be seen in the tradition of very many of these pavilions, where you have one entrance door, you align, and you get in after a few hours waiting. So it was clear for us we want to enable people to walk through the pavilion and to kind of be part of the environment, even though there was, of course, an access line to go into the exhibition and to have a ride on the chairlift. So, but this is for us was very important to just create a protected area, a roof that protects from the sun and from the rain. So it was really occupied. During middays, people came and just sat down, and during some periods, it was almost impossible to walk through the pavilion. This is a main view from the outside, and a detailed view of the cell which were attached to the curtain. We created a light installation to show the energy of the environment. So each cell of a size of, let's say, almost a face size, contained a solar cell, photovoltaic cell, a battery, just to store the energy. Also a chip, of course, for the intelligence, and a sender for the cells to communicate. And the last element was a photocell to also communicate with the visitors. So towards the night, the energy that was loaded during the day was given back in form of flashlight, and people standing there with the cameras flashing at the pavilion could kind of create a response from the totality of the facade. Just because each element was able to communicate with the others. A few last images from the night scene, and one image that kind of shows the Lupu Bridge going from Midtown, from the old town to the south area, and the pavilion, it kind of gets part of the existing environment of the city. Context. So, too many pages. We love concrete because the material enables us to create history. No other material is linked to the idea of durability as concrete. Thereby, a concrete building can become part of the eternal city, the fabric of the city, part of the permanence corpse of the city, within an environment within the context. This is the political aspect of architecture, because every place consists of cultural traces, relates to the past, the existing, and the future. The city is built. Only transformation of the surface takes place. Even the landscape is built. We like the potential of this dialogue, because architecture always causes a contextual reaction. We distinguish between urban context, of course, the site of the site situation, the historical context, what has been there before, what could be there in the future, and the architectural context that is being represented by this image. As architects, we always think of what has been thought of before and might be invented in the future. The last project is built in Basel. For us, it's active on a very urban scale. It was also created by the urban contextual situation, part of it being existing and part of it being built after our construction, but already being planned, being present during the programming process. The Volta building is a central block, a multifunctional house that is poured just in one material, concrete, insulating concrete. The model shows this. It's a model 1:33 in scale, a model that has been made for an exhibition we had in Zurich a few years ago. The Volta Center is part of a city development area in the north of Basel, the area where most industrial sites were located. Basel is an industrial city, and exactly at this position, this is the borderline between the residential areas in residential quarters and the industry nowadays, being part of the site of Novartis, one of the big pharmaceutical firms of the city of Basel. So this borderline was cutting the two areas. It was one of the major links between the road system of Germany and the motorway of France. So by driving from Germany to France, all the traffic went through this bypass in a certain way. And over 50 years, the discussion went on how to recreate a new link underneath the ground. In this process, this part here where our building is located in was completely demolished to enable to build a tunnel system for this new link between the two countries, or the three countries. And of course it enabled to rethink the built area in this part of the city. So this is an aerial view from the building lot, which what you can see here is almost a triangle parcel that was given us to plan on during the competition. And in this area, the existing houses were demolished in order to be replaced with new construction to kind of show the transformation of the area. Altogether, I think about 300 apartments were built in this zone. Very much construction regarding the history and the existing houses here, which were built almost 100 years ago. So the idea was to give an impulse to the development of the neighboring industrial area, to the transformation from that industrial use into residential mixed use. We the programming of the house was residential on one side, so the house contains about 75 apartments. It was, but also clear that some central functions had to be placed in the house, functions, infrastructure functions, retail for the area, for the neighborhood. What you can see here is a formal train station that is under protection, that could not be or cannot be replaced by a bigger construction, although the need could be given in the future. So this railroad links to France, so it's also the major TGV line from Basel to Paris that goes through this area. And since the new agreements between Europe, the European Union and Switzerland, trains could stop here at this very small station. Before that, they had to go to the main station in order to have the custom clearance, etc. So there is a few changes just to link the area which is kind of hidden, abandoned for a long period, to link it to the heart of the city and to the public transportation system. What we're working out is a very sculptural project. We said it's a house that kind of changes its appearance due to the contextual situation. So we have on one hand the existing old bridge, well, the link between, with all the traffic going here through the city. This would remain. So we had this on one side, and of course a, let's say, irregular geometry of the railway plaza. So the existing railway is located here, the railway station, and opposite to this, there was a residential building already planned in a rounded form. We said we think the space should be widened. The house should appear more solitary, more independent from this kind of strong geometry. We could not really see why this form was given, especially because this direction doesn't lead anywhere. So it was an end point of this access road, and at last the rounded corner here kind of links to the existing corners, and is also a part that the backside of the house, by enlarging it and building it higher than the existing, it could become a front side, a viewpoint, a tower-like part of the building sticking out of the corpse of the urban environment. So the form was kind of given already. We perforated this monolithic block with two courtyards, both of them irregular in shape, in order to avoid a direct parallel situation. So one of the courtyards, the bigger one, is completely surrounded by built form, and the second one perforates the envelope of the building and allows a view into the city. This is the main ground floor level with the main axis fully glazed towards the urban plaza, and you can see the positioning of the staircases at the side to enable to access the upper level. This cross section shows the functional the diversity. There's parking lot underneath the ground, commercial areas on 2 floors, and this here is the perforation of the block with the first and the second courtyard. So from this level here, the following floors are reserved for residential. So you already have a certain height from the ground. Certainly you're above the existing bridge. There's a series of different floor layouts. Each floor has about 17 different apartment shapes, each of them having 2 different views. The corner apartment has, of course, 2 sides. All the other apartments have a direct view into the courtyard and into the city. You see how the form or the typology changes from a rather rectangular layout into a polygonal shape towards the west side. This first image shows the access across the bridge, from which you can directly walk downwards onto the plaza. The main front facade is undercut in order to create an open gesture and to link across the dividing appearance of the bridge. The windows have been cut out of this form freely, very horizontal perforations create continuous appearance of the block from the front to the side. But the major change comes through the form, the change of horizontality into verticality. So from the corner you see the 2 conditions, the very flush front facade and the more, let's say, the side facade with a higher depth. So it seems as the side facade is kind of cut open, and at the very end these 2 systems or these 2 appearances come together and show the building from far. So there was this fact is also coming from the condition of the noise of the street so there's been a calculation of the existing and the future traffic, and so it was just possible to use one single window system towards the west side, because there is still a high frequency in traffic. So the very flush areas of the front facade are being created by a double window. So there's a second layer of glass just to reduce the influence of the traffic noise. You can see the appearance of the surface. The concrete that has been used was cast in just one layer. A thickness of 50 centimeters enables to have enough heat buffer, insulation for summer and winter. The material is made of a cement combination with a very light gravel, a recycling material that comes from glass recycling. It's actually kind of a glass foam that is being used to pour this concrete. And due to the porous surface of the gravel, there's a lot of air in the concrete that creates a more porous surface. So for us, when we made the first samples of the walls, we thought it's quite a different appearance than just ordinary concrete. It more relates to a travertine, maybe a natural stone. A few more elements and some images of the inside. This is one of the staircases that leads to the very top. Here you can see the thickness of the wall, the windows that have been attached to the flush to the inner line of the wall. A view into the enclosed courtyard. So here you can see this quality. It's a very dense block. I mean, according to Swiss conditions, I think Paris is a much denser city, even. But here you can see what kind of spatial flow is being created by not using a rectangular geometry. So this second courtyard is kind of like a view into the city. For us, it was like a big window from where you can see the previous built areas. The courtyards, both of them, will not be accessible. So we said it's rather just a very silent garden, just growing, and it more reminds of a poetic idea of nature than something that is being under use directly by the inhabitants. There is one of the apartments having a central room where you can see into both of these inner courts. And one last image. Now, Mr. Caminada was talking for 2 hours. I think I make a stop here. Yes, thank you very much.